welcome to The Top, the podcast that provides you with what you need to succeed in the real estate world. Brought to you by the Collin County Association of Realtors. Get ready to tackle top real estate topics in bite-sized amounts with CCAR President Shauna Acquisto and Jonna Fernandez, CCAR's Chief Operating Officer.
Hi, Shauna.
Hi, Jonna.
Welcome to The Top.
I am happy to be here.
And today we're joined by friend of the podcast, Jennifer Parker.
Ooh, hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for being with us again.
I'm excited to be here.
So, Jennifer, we asked you back because your property tax knowledge is unmatched. We learned so much from you, and we could use a little bit of property tax help right about now.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
So they actually are planning on mailing out April 14th, the notices. They typically come out about mid-April, and I think Friday is the 14th, so they'll start dropping them in the mail around
Get ready.
Time.
Yeah, so people don't like surprises when it comes to property taxes. So should residents expect any big jump in their property values as they experienced in 2021?
It's not going to be as big as it was for last year, but they should expect about a 6 to 10% increase.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about how property tax assessments work? What factors do assessors consider when they're determining the value of a property?
So they look at sales in the neighborhood. It's done on a mass appraisal. So they're going to look at the overall sales for an actual neighborhood and apply that to the entire neighborhood. And then if there are specific factors that are brought up for an individual property, then that can be brought to the appraisal district, like, deferred maintenance, that type of thing. If a property sells, then they are going to look at putting that on for the sales price. The comptroller mandates that the values be at the current market value.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So, Jennifer, I have heard of instances where a county appraiser who has never stepped foot in the home comes in at $125,000 higher or more than an appraiser who visited the home as part of the home purchase. So, how can they be off so much?
So again, it's done on a mass basis.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at individual properties. So they're going to take all of the sales for the neighborhood, and they're not going to know the condition of the inside of the home. That's just kind of the way mass appraisal works.
Mm-hmm.
In a circumstance where that happens, now there's a lot of factors that could affect it. I mean, how old is the appraisal?
Mm-hmm.
Did the home sell for, get fixed up and then resell, different types of things. But if you have an appraisal that is within, I would say, a year or less old, then I would use that as evidence if you are going to protest your property.
That's a good point. Okay, great. Is there anything else that could be done? I mean, obviously keeping those documents and documenting if your home is updated or not, because they don't visit the home, I guess. Mm-hmm. But is there anything else that you would suggest?
Definitely need to file your homestead exemption. That's where the biggest relief is coming from right now, is from the homestead exemption. And there are a lot of people that did not file their homestead exemption, and you can go back 2 years on that.
Okay,
So
I didn't know that. That's good information.
even though there's a deadline, that you can file a late homestead exemption, and the homestead exemption must be in place for a year before you get your cap value. So what saved a lot of people last year was that they had the homestead exemption for at least a year, and their value got capped.
So that first year, it can go up.
It can go up to the purchase price. If it goes up higher than the purchase price, then I would take the closing statement in.
Okay.
And and the reason that's important, the state comptroller does a survey, and most people don't understand this. It's a little bit extra information that maybe you don't want to know.
That's why you're here.
We like the extra.
It is helpful to understand that the state comptroller does a survey. They want to make sure that the school districts are getting funded properly. Mm-hmm. So it is a school district survey to make sure that the sales prices and the houses are within, right now it's within 95% of the sales price. And I just literally, when I got out of the car, right before I got out, I looked at my emails, and I have an email. There's a new bill that's been proposed to change that from 95% of sales price to 90% of sales price. So I don't know if you've ever heard of appraisal districts failing the state comptroller's assessment. It's because they've determined that the values of the properties in a certain area are not within that 95% range.
Interesting.
So if that gets changed to 90%, then I think maybe we will see appraisal districts being less aggressive. An example is Travis County. They have failed the state comptroller test 2 years in a row. If you fail it for 3 years in a row, then it's a really big deal. There's problems that come along
Interesting.
with that.
Wow.
Okay, so the appeal is not the last step in the protest process, right?
Correct.
Is it?
First, you file the appeal, and then you have the opportunity. You can request an informal hearing, which I highly recommend, because the informal hearing is just you and the appraisal district having a discussion. You can find out what evidence they're going to present. You can present your evidence. They can ask you questions. Maybe they want some more information. It's less formal.
And intimidating, I guess,
and less
too.
intimidating too, because the next step, if you're not happy with the informal process, then the next step is a formal hearing, and it is very formal. There's 3 panel members, and the appraisal district and yourself. You actually are sworn in, just like if you are testifying in court. So it feels very intimidating. The appraisal district presents their information, you present your information, and then the panel of 3 members discuss it. And it's kind of interesting because you're sitting there listening to them talk back and forth, but you're done with your testimony, and they could say something. It's happened to me. They might say something. I'm like, wait, y'all misunderstood that, but you're not really allowed to discuss it. So they talk amongst themselves, and then between the 3 of them, make a ruling. And
So
then
can
that's
I
all that.
throw another bonus in here? Bonus question. Is this something you would do as a homeowner on your own, or how would you go about this process?
So you can hire an agent. In my opinion, I think you're better off doing it yourself.
Okay.
Because you know your home better. They're more sympathetic to homeowners than they are agents.
Okay.
I am a licensed property tax consultant, but I primarily handle commercial properties. But when I feel like the appraisal district probably thinks, oh, this agent's in here, they're just trying to make money off of these people. Whereas if you go in as an individual, I feel like they're more sympathetic to
Okay.
you, and you know your property better.
That's really good because, I get calls from clients all the time asking, what do I do? What do I do? So that's really good
So
information.
you as a realtor, I think it's important that we explain to our clients what the value of their property is, because remember,
Yes.
the mandate is that it has to be at the market value. And so sometimes people are just like, well, I'm going to protest it because they can't raise it that much. Well, the sales are supporting that much of an
market, right.
increase, so they can raise it. But there is one other, if you go to the appraisal review board, the formal hearing, and you're still not happy, there is another level of protest after that.
Okay.
You can file for arbitration, or you can hire an attorney and file a lawsuit. For commercial properties, we do a lot of litigation. For residential, it's actually a lot more cost effective and something you can do on your own if you file for arbitration.
Okay. Good.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So, Jennifer, are there any changes a property owner can expect to see in terms of property tax policies and procedures?
Right now, the main focus of the legislature is it involves transparency. So we'll start looking for a push for even more transparency. They're also, this doesn't really relate to the policies or procedures, but there's a push for some increase in homestead exemptions as well.
That would be nice. So how can property owners stay up to date with the changes in property tax laws and regulations, and what resources are available to them?
I think the best thing to do is to follow knowyourtaxes.org. You can go there. There's videos you can watch. I think that we as realtors should really dive deep into that website and look at all of the information, but share it with your clients, because there's a wealth of information that you can get on that site.
That's great.
Thank you for that. So if property owners, is there a way that they can work with their local government officials if they're wanting to advocate for more fair and transparent property tax policies, maybe something that works both for property owners and the community as a whole? How would they go about that?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because most people don't understand that the property taxes, it's like a 3 pieces to the puzzle. I look at it as 3 buckets. One bucket is the valuation, but then another very important bucket is the budget of the municipality. And then the third bucket is the tax rate. All of those 3 components make up what your property taxes are going to be. So we already know that the valuation is mandated, that has to be at market value. So the concentration really should be on those other 2 buckets, because market value is market value, and you really can't change that unless the market changes,
right?
Basically. So the budget, that's the process where the municipalities have the discussion about what their budget is going to be, what they're planning to do. Those are open hearings. Those are open discussions. We should be actively involved in those discussions. If you go to knowyourtaxes.org, every single person that represents you has an email address in there. I feel like that is probably the best way to become active in the process, because it's hard, like for me and you, how many taxing entities do you have?
Right.
What is there? Probably 4 or 5. You have to know exactly when that hearing is or when that meeting is that they're going to be discussing the budget for that entity, and you have to know it for each entity. In my mind, I think it's a little bit easier to start communicating via email. So when we see that these values are going up, I think we should be letting our local politicians, our local representatives know the values are going up. Our expectation is that you control your budget and you just don't automatically give yourself an increase. And then there's a process when they start setting the tax rates. And again, we need to be interactive with them. And if you can't attend that particular meeting, send them an email and let them know that your value has gone up and you expect them to control their budget and adjust the tax rates accordingly. If you go to knowyourtaxes.org, you can look up your address and you can pull it up and you can see what the tax rates have been and the values have been over the years. But it also shows you what you've paid in your taxes. And there is, I didn't print it out so that I would have it to look at, but I believe there's a tax rate that it shows what it would be at no new revenue, which no new revenue means the municipalities would get the same amount of money except for any new properties that have been built. It pulls those out so that their budget would remain the same. It tells you what the tax rate would have to be for that to happen, what they're allowed to increase it to, because the SB2 a few years ago made it so that they could only increase by 3.5% their revenue instead of it had been 8%. So it shows you what that is automatically, and then it shows you what tax rate they adopted, which is interesting to look at.
Right.
Yeah, it
Because
sounds like,
when I looked at it, and I haven't looked at it in several months, but at the end of the protest period, when they first started setting the rates, I was noticing I didn't see anybody that was going back to the no new revenue rate. So they were all taking more income. And this process was never set up so that these entities would automatically get an increase in their budget every single year. And they're just
Right.
they're just continuing to take that money. So, I mean, on the other hand, I'm glad that I have police officers that help me. I'm thankful for, the hospital, the county hospital
Yes.
services. I'm thankful for all of those things to
Yes,
them.
the feedback is important, and I think, you talked about knowyourtaxes.org and how important that is, especially for homeowners and for real estate professionals. But is there anything else that we can do to help our clients just understand? Because it is complicated and it's complex to really dive in and dissect and understand it. So do you have any other tips for us as real estate professionals?
As real estate professionals, I think you should watch the videos that are on knowyourtaxes.org because there are videos that walk you through a lot of the process and help explain it to you. You knowing what the process is going to help your clients, but we do need to educate them again about what their market value is. You can't just go and protest the account saying you can't raise it that much. You raised it too much. And that's what a lot of people do. And so I did check with the appraisal district. Last year they had just under 100,000 protests.
Oh my goodness.
But so there's that many people protesting their value, and we know what the market did last year. If you were to see how many people let the municipalities know not to take in that much money and to go ahead and roll back their tax rate, it's like maybe 5 people show up at the discussions, 3 to 5 people. It's next to nothing. So nobody's telling them to adjust your tax rate so that you're not taking so much money of my taxes. We didn't buy our houses so that the values would go down.
Right.
We bought the houses so that the values would go up.
Right.
And based on the way the system is, the valuation is going to be based on the market value. So we need to be looking at this from a different angle. We need to look at those other 2 buckets and talk to the municipalities more than we are the appraisal district.
And on a side note, when you go to sell a home and someone's looking up the taxes and they'll see the assessed value versus what they're paying for it, and they instantly feel like, oh, am I overpaying for this property because it's more than? So that's always interesting. So I just think education is so important, and it's what we do.
Well, and another thing to help with that is to help understand and explain to your clients that the valuations are based on the prior year sales. So the way that this works is the appraisal district has been looking at sales, and they're currently looking at the sales through the end of last year to establish the values for this year so that they can get those notices out on April the 14th. So right now as we speak, they're finalizing putting the values on the properties. So that's why usually you will see that the value on the property is less than what it will sell for because they're behind about a year.
So when I was a kid and you would go to the mailbox and wait for your report cards to come in the mail, is this similar? Like, oh no, I'm scared to get it.
Well, the good thing is we're not going to see, I did check, I think he said that it was like 28% overall increase last year. I have a note on it somewhere, but yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think he said they were up 28. Yeah. Residential average increase was about 28 to 29% last year. Wow. But we also saw that in the market. I mean, I know a lot of our reports were at least like statewide up 23%, and Collin County is performing way better than the rest of the state. I did pull, so the median value in December was $491,000. This, by the way, I was able to get off of ccar.net.
Market Viewer.
Nice. Yeah.
Such a great tool.
But that's up 6.7% year over year. And January median price just from one month to another was $510,000, and that's up 9.8%
And
year
that's
over
for
year.
Collin County.
That's just for Collin County. Now, what the appraisal district said was they saw that the peak was in March, so of course I needed to pull Market Viewer to double check
Yes.
that. And indeed, our March median price was $540,000 in March of 2022, which was up 36.7% year over year from the prior year. And that was the year that our values went up 28%.
So stabilizing is good. I mean,
Stabilizing
getting this
is
into
really
more of
good.
a balanced market,
Yes.
and I don't know. I feel fortunate where we do live because you don't see the fluctuations that you see across the country, and we're still okay.
Yeah.
This is okay.
So one hint that I would say, if you are going to protest your account, you're going to want to use the sales from like November,
Yeah.
December, and not necessarily using sales from March, because that's when the
good
sales
point. Very
were
smart,
so much
yeah.
higher. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Be
you want to be strategic about it. They're going to try to use, but when he talked, he said, we're going to try to use sales from closer to the end of the year as opposed to the March sales. But if you bought your house in March and you paid $540,000, you just set the market for that
Yes.
house.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge to try to get it lower than what you paid for it. And then you got to think back. The state comptroller mandates it be at market value. Market value is what you paid for it. And then they have that 95% rule. So maybe it could get a little bit lower, but their goal is to be at at least 95% of market value.
Okay. Gosh, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here, and such great information. So important. Before we let you go, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
I want to reiterate the fact that it's really important to educate our clients.
Yes.
Educate them on their market value, help them understand that the state comptroller mandates that value be at market value. The protest deadline is May the 15th or 30 days after the notices are mailed. So since I
think last year they were late, so they extended that.
They extended that. Yeah, I think the 15th fell on a holiday. So they're going to get those out on the 14th. So the majority of people should see their notices that following week, like the week of the 17th, and you'll have 30 days to protest.
Okay.
Dallas County, we understand, is going to run about 10 days to 14 days late because they had a cyber attack. And so they're recovering from that. Yes, they're recovering from that. And it's amazing that they're only going to be like maybe 2 weeks late because they were down for at least 3 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
from the cyber attack.
Wow.
And then just really reiterate the fact that they can go to knowyourtaxes.org. And there is, when I say there's a wealth of information, I mean, I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is like a lot of information and very helpful information, things that you don't realize.
And that coming from you is great because this is your expertise. So I'm glad to hear that.
It's very good information, and it's also it's presented in a way that's easy to understand because this whole process is really confusing.
It is.
It's really confusing for people, and I know from experience from people in this room that there are remedies. If you really, really have a good reason to be protesting your account, don't back down. But if you're just protesting because they can't raise it that much, then you just don't have a leg to stand on. You need to have
You got to be a little savvy.
Yeah.
And know what's going on.
You need to be realistic.
Yeah.
You really do. I think it's important for us as realtors to help our clients be realistic in what their value is and what their expectations should be, because they're going to go down there. If you think about it, 100,000 people protested last year. Think how long people waited or if you go in person, you stood in line and it's really frustrating and you're just really angry that the value is up. But the reality is you paid more for it. You're just mad because the taxes are going to be higher than what they were last year. Well, now you're just going to be mad because they're not going to lower the value. Mm-hmm. But if you have a homestead exemption and you're already capped.
That's a big protection.
That's a big protection.
Yeah.
And understand if this year you're capped and you're still paying less than what you would pay without the homestead cap, there's no sense in protesting because you're not going to get the value any lower. You're just going to go down. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to get it lower enough to save you more money than what you're already saving. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
it does. And, having these conversations in the beginning and being a little proactive with them is really important. So when you have a client and you have a buyer and they're looking to purchase, to just get them involved and educated about this up front, I think would really
and tell your client that, okay, you're paying $350,000 for this house. It's on the tax rolls for $250,000. You need to make a plan that your taxes are going to go up because your value is going to go up to $350,000 at a minimum. So you just need to plan for that. And that's what I tell my clients.
I do too.
Put the money in the bank. And I used to tell them they could put it in the bank or pay extra to go into their escrow account.
But then they just send it back.
They send it back. So. Yeah, depending on the timing.
Yeah.
Because I had a client that closed in January. In the middle of the year, they got this refund.
Yes.
And they were like,
what do I do?
No, it was great because my husband lost his job. So we were able to live off that. I was like, now you have to come up with that money.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is it's best to just put it in a savings account.
Yes.
Calculate what the extra payment is going to be, divide it out by your payments. Every time you make a payment, put a little bit in to the escrow account.
Having an escrow shortage is not fun.
It's not fun because it gets doubled.
Yes.
Because you have to pay the short amount, but you also have to increase it enough so that you're not going to be short next year. So you're kind of paying twice in 1 year. And I've heard horror stories of people's payments going up like $200 a month, $500 a month, $700 a month.
Yes.
So those shortages can really bite you.
Yeah.
Really.
For sure.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming and talking with us again today. We have learned, as usual, so much from you. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It was a pleasure
You're the
being
best,
here.
Jennifer.
I enjoy spending time with y'all. And I love talking about property taxes.
We're so glad that you do.
Those listening, thanks for hanging out with us. And don't forget to subscribe to Welcome to the Top or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. If you have a question or topic you want us to discuss, email us at ask@welcometothetop.com and listen to hear it covered.
We can't wait to hear from you guys. Thanks for listening. I'm Shauna Cristo, and let's keep building for our future.
Special thanks to our hosts, Jonna Fernandez and Shauna Quisto. Producer, Bree Westbury. Audio engineer, Mike Maples. Outreach and Guest Relations Manager, Kendall Crawford. And podcast administrator, Sean Offsall. Tune in next time, and don't forget to enjoy your journey to the top. The statements made by speakers in this podcast do not necessarily represent the views or position of the Collin County Association of Realtors, its leadership, or its members. This podcast is not intended to give legal, financial, medical, or other advice, but simply to provide information as a springboard to further discussion and investigation.